These are love poems from God. Smells of good food. Truth never frightens. I remember once walking out in the winter to greet my father as he returned from work. He was a little late that night, and I waited by a street corner near our house. The cold can enliven, thanks. My wool coat became a sacred robe. How happy I felt to be alive. I waited in a world of magic, smells of good food, the street lamps, the smoke coming from chimneys, the candles burning in windows, the snow. Angels feasted as I did on existence, and God kept saying, have more of what I made. I saw him coming. We ran into each other's arms, and he lifted me as he had so often, twirled me through the air, his hands beneath my arms. That is what truth does, lifts and lets us fly. Isn't that yummy? Didn't that take you by surprise? You expected a human being at the end of that poem, admit it. Okay, now, this is going to, it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. I feel like I'm having a private dinner party with people for a weekend, with people I've known for many years. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we're doing this weekend, so you know what we're doing this weekend. I have to find my notes. So this particular workshop, I could actually say I've worked on for 5 years. And it's the first time I'm teaching it. And I have never struggled with anything as much as I've struggled with what I'm about to share with you. And nothing's been as important to me as this work, I would say, since probably Sacred Contracts. And nothing has been as difficult for me to language, to capture, to language, to find the right words. It has eluded me. It has driven me crazy. It has kept me up. No subject has been as defying for me to catch, because it's really not a subject. It was a vision. And it was one of those downloads that turned my world in a different direction. But it was bigger than that. Sacred Contracts, Anatomy of the Spirit. How anatomy was born was that I was teaching in a workshop with Norm Shealy. I had been given a contract for anatomy. I was writing it. It was after I recorded Anatomy of the Spirit for Tammy Simon. So I'd already emptied the subject from me. And when I empty a subject, I'm done with it. I've never read anything I've written. I've never read a book. That's why I won't record it the way a lot of authors do when they read their work. I've never listened to an audio tape of mine. When it's out of me, I simply move on. And I never look back. It's gone. I've released it, and I never look back. I hardly ever look at photographs. A day lived is a day gone for me. And I simply move on. I couldn't write Energy and Anatomy twice. And as it was coming out of me, I had already written it. It came out orally. And it was awful. And I knew it. And I was really, really, really struggling that summer, trying to and I developed, conveniently enough, a sinus infection. And it was convenient because and it was a brutal, I mean, we're talking a 4-star flaming butane sinus infection. It was the only one I ever had in my life. But it was actually then that I discovered that I didn't have a turbinate system. I don't have what all of you have. I don't have this whole system in my nasal, which is why I get these I can't warm my sinuses during the winter. All the warming device, the filtering device that we're born with, I don't have, which is why, like, while I breathe in cold air and it goes boom, because I don't have that. And I remember this doctor saying, "You don't have a turbinate system." And I was like, "A turbo system? What is that?" I thought cars had that. And he said, and I'll never forget this line so long as I am on this earth: "You have nothing to look forward to but a life of relentless pain." I swear to God. And I went, "Oh!" And I walked out of there and I said, "Ma, you know what he said to me?" I said, and I was, "You jackass." And I walked out. Who would say such a thing to a mortal, you know? And I was like, "You jackass, I'm not coming back to see you. You need some hope and optimism in your style." What a bedside manner, you know? So anyway, I was like, whew, give me the eucalyptus, give me Vicks, give me something, but anything. But anyway, that autumn I was teaching a workshop with Norm, and I hadn't progressed at all with anatomy. And I was I was in dry dock. I was in the desert. And I remember praying, you got to do something here, because you gave me a book contract. Something came along, and you didn't do that so I would be nice, good, and humiliated. Let's get to work here. And I was literally teaching in a blank board, just like this. And I had a group of students, a little less than you, not much. That's why I love these little boutique workshops, because they're cooking chambers for me. And I turned around to a blank wall and a blank board, and I looked, and all of a sudden, I saw 7 chakras, and then boom, 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 boom. I saw saw in the mystical sense. In here, I perceived. I got the 7 sacraments, the 7. They just layered, and I boom. And I looked, and it just came together in the world behind my mind. I had what Teresa would call an intellectual revelation. And I just stood there, staring at this blank wall, but through that blank board, but I was seeing a universe open up. And I couldn't move. I just went, boom! Got it. And I looked at everyone and I said, "I'll be right back." And I went down and I called my editor. And I said, "I want to reshape the book. It's got to look this way." And she said, and she paused for a moment, which would become our habit. And she said, "Do it." Yeah, do it. And that became Anatomy of the Spirit. This material, this book, was born actually from a different kind of vision, that kind of cooked in a different way. And as many of you know, I'm kind of a political creature. But it isn't about that. It's about a deep, threaded passion I have, I think, that's motivated me all my life, which is what is the nature of life? What is the nature of our mystery? It's a thread. What is the nature of what's going on in human evolution now? Another thread. What is the nature of the chaos going on? Another thread. What's been the impact of 50 years of spiritual consciousness? Another thread. Where are we going? Why is there such a hypnotic state around people? Why can they not see the obvious? Another thread. And then one day, something occurred to me in a massive collision in my head. And I saw something and I got it. I got it from my point of view. So for me, content creates context. In the same way my good friend Jim Garrison and I have often talked about this, that in order for us to see something, we have to see the whole. And I think what has always helped me is that I see the whole through history. So I have to lay a groundwork here because it's because I speak history that it gives me a grandeur of an entry point. And we are at a time that I would call the most pivotal time in the history of civilization. And what I am looking at and what you're going to look at this weekend is about, the key word is relationship. But when you hear that word, you automatically think and reduce it to a relationship, a person. Of course you do. But I'm not thinking about that. We'll get to that. The pivotal thing that I am first thinking about is how human beings relate to existence itself. That's our key. How do the very mechanism of relationship itself, which has morphed, it has morphed. For the first time in the history of civilization. Do you realize the sentence I just hit you with? It has morphed. We are going through an axial shift in civilization. Not a social trend. Not something that will get better because the economics are changing. Nothing. This isn't about something getting better or getting worse. Those words do not apply to what we are living through and we are participating in. To say we're living through something is not to language what we are experiencing, because that distances you. You are an active participant in a profound axial shift that is now the journey of humanity. And this is what you have to comprehend. You are an active player. That's number one. Number two, what is changing is the fundamental core way in which we relate to all that exists within us and around us. So I am not speaking about one-on-one romantic relationships. That is but a pebble on a beach. I am speaking of the ocean and the archetype of how we engage in relation to everything else and how we see relating and how we position ourselves within the sea of what we think of relating at all. And how that itself has already fundamentally shifted within us, and you're not even aware that has changed. You have not even a drop of awareness that you have morphed. It's as if we've grown a third arm and not even noticed because it's happened so fast that none of us has paid attention to the fact that we have become a different type of species in front of our very eyes. So accustomed are we to thinking the outside world has changed, but not us. But not us. So accustomed are we to believing that the problems are always political. That explains what's wrong with the world. It's a political problem because that's how we think. Everything can be explained by changing a political party. That must be the problem. The problem here, which is why the whole world is in chaos, must be a political one. How preposterous can that be? That the whole of evolution and all that is happening in the chaotic field of evolution is the result of who is in political offices on 10 Downing Street, in the Kremlin, and in Washington. Can you possibly comprehend the foolishness of that? Am I making a point here? Okay. But human nature is such that we are reductionists. We want to reduce everything to the simplest possible reason so that we cannot think about it. We don't want, because it's too huge a thing for us to think about. So we want to reduce it, reductionism, and find the culprit. Let us reduce, find the virus, the culprit, punish that thing, destroy that thing, and then move on. This is human nature. That's not what's happening now. Historically, if we look at history, the great change agent has always been war. That is the greatest change agent. The second one has always been scientific discovery or creation. For example, creating penicillin or quinine to fight malaria, or the printing press with Gutenberg, who, by the way, didn't create the printing press. He simply perfected it. But in creating the printing press, the public intellectual, the capacity for literacy went from the elite and the monasteries and the monks who had to letter each book by hand. Suddenly, the world had a chance to be educated in the West. That was gargantuan, but here's my point. It took only one invention of one thing in one room to engage a transformation of the whole of humanity. So I want to emphasize that it was one invention that probably was perfected on one day. Are you with me here? And it's important that you catch this. One invention that was probably came to perfection on one day, though it took Gutenberg several tries. But on one day he made it, and suddenly we had power. And on that one day, though Gutenberg printed but one sheet of paper and then one sheet of paper after that, symbolically, it represented all Western Europe coming into literacy on that one piece of paper. Are you with me here? Okay. So that one act was the act of all literacy hitting Western Europe. It was symbolic of the beginning of the Spanish Inquisition, because as literacy rose, so did the fear of literacy. So what we have is a thread and a domino. Instantly, with one act, and this is what a principle I want you to get in your head. It took one tiny invention that came together in one day, Gutenberg in his little shop, set in motion countless threads that would be called books, libraries, universities, the literacy of Western Europe, the University of Notre Dame, The university of all of them in Western Europe, Cologne, all of them, the greatest universities. And the dominoes that would fall, the capacity of Rome to control the intellectual flow, to control every word that the Western Christian world would use. Were they allowed even to say the word blasphemy? Were they allowed even to hold a Bible in their hand? Well, now we'll print all of them and they'll get one of their own. And thus they could question the mind of God. The dominoes that would fall, the power that would fall, that would no longer be in the hands of a few. Threads and dominoes. Threads and dominoes. This is the name of my new book. See how it works? Threads, potential, dominoes, the inevitable that fall. With every one thing. Now I'm going to hit a pause button here, because this same mechanism is what is inherent in every single thing that happens. You set a series of threads in motion and dominoes that will come down. It happens all the time. It cannot not happen. Every war does this. Every invention does this. Penicillin happens. And what happens? It's a vaccine, making inevitable the healing of so many illnesses. And it opens up the possibility that other illnesses can be healed. And it brings down the death rate, dominoes. It takes down epidemics, threads and dominoes. Okay. So as you look through history through this lens, you begin to get this awesome notion that actually most of what causes the major turning points in history are not great big hugenesses, but the actions of one person in one room doing one thing. But that one thing that person does is a thing that has millions of threads and millions of dominoes. That's what it takes. It does not take billions of dollars. It does not take trillions of armies. It takes the clever person, the genius, the demon, who knows how to set in motion threads and dominoes. This is a strategy. This is the strategy of a very sharp warrior. This is the strategy of someone who understands how the psychic field works. The world we are living in now, the way in which we now calculate relationships, has been completely redone. The speed at which we relate, the way in which we see everything, the way in which we relate to ourselves, has been completely reorganized, renewed, revamped, because of one thing, one event, one thing. Though it has had billions, trillions of dominoes and threads as a result, and many more to come, no doubt. Only one thing did this. One thing that created and set all of this in motion. and took down an entire civilization. And started the civilization. We are in an axial shift of a once familiar civilization, and now we are in the shores of another. And we are the societies, the generations, who are suspended between civilizations, which is why, well, I'll get to that. But evidence of this is why we are not sure. This is why so many of the familiar occupations are being swept away. They belong to that civilization. That civilization. The world as we knew it, its boundaries, its technology, its species that are disintegrating in front of our eyes belong to that one. And we're watching them melt right in front of us. The one event that set this in motion was the Manhattan Project. When Oppenheimer and his crew split the atom right here in Chicago, and then created the atomic bomb, but it was splitting the atom. Just that one thing. As incomprehensible as that might seem, we slipped into a time warp. We entered into nuclear time. Nuclear time. Here's the operative word, a different relationship. A different template, a different relationship with time and space, distance, a different energy plane, a different consciousness. It would require a different consciousness of humanity to deal with nuclear power. We entered into a different consciousness of power, a different consciousness of destruction, a different consciousness of time and space, of everything. Because the atom, nuclear speed, nuclear technology, if you can comprehend this, just like with Gutenberg, one page was symbolic of all pages. Splitting one atom was symbolic of splitting every atom that existed in the whole of humanity. Because with that, all of us entered the atomic age simultaneously. It wasn't just Oppenheimer and his crew that entered the atomic age, or the Japanese who felt the bomb drop on them, or the Enola Gay that dropped the bomb. All of us entered the nuclear age simultaneously. We became a nuclear world in that second. Are you with me now? Even the Falkland Islands became a nuclear part of the nuclear world, because no piece of Earth now existed in a non-nuclear world. From the second one country was nuclear, all countries were nuclear. And that was all that was to it. Whether or not they had the bomb was irrelevant. From the second electricity was discovered, the whole world lived in a world with electricity. Whether or not you had it was irrelevant. The world had now gone electric. It was just whether you had the wiring. Simple as that. Electricity had been discovered. We'd reached the electrical age. Done. Now I'm going to introduce a mythology because it belongs here. And I want to, sorry. Here. You know what? I like to teach with this building image because it works for your imagination. It's simple and it works. This is a building and this is you. This is representing you. And let's just say, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 10th is PH, penthouse. Now let's just say that every floor is a different way you see the world. And as a building never leaves its location, agreed? So you're the building. But what you're free to do is run up and down the stairs. And every altitude gives you a different view of the same world that you're living in, agreed? So that the higher you go, it gets, let's say that you decide to move to the 3rd floor, the rent gets higher. You have to work harder, but the view is more beautiful. But then if you want to like move up here, then your neighbors say you're snooty. It gets really expensive, but the view becomes incredibly expansive. And it becomes more and more challenging for you to hear the outside world. The higher up you go, the less you can hear anything from the outside at all. This ceases to become an issue. You can't hear it anymore. So it's not a distraction. You can't hear it, you can't see it. So the only thing that matters is the silence of the world in you and around you from your private view. And when you come down here, you can't share it because they have no idea what you're talking about. Can't share it with the other people. You can't share it with other first-floor buildings. You used to be able to chat because everybody was on the same ground and of course from down here at street level, you thought that was the world. And if someone had come down from the penthouse and said, yo, you should see the cosmos, you wouldn't even want to talk to them. You wouldn't even want to talk to them. Who do they think they are? Throw them off the top of the building. Smash them like a bug. But now you made it, you have this sense when you get to the 6th or 7th, there probably is something up there, and you feel this gravitational yearning to get there. This yearning, this passion. Because you have a hint that there might be something. And the more you get there, the more you start putting what you see, not literally, but in metaphor. What's it like up there? Well, it's like this. I see these gorgeous clouds, and they kind of look like what? Well, I see these vistas, and they're just unbelievable. They look like ice cream floating in front of me with all this stunning color. It no longer looks literal anymore. It starts looking like this material of dreams, images, poetry. This is the difference between prose and poetry. This is why the scripture writers of the Old Testament wrote Psalms. They no longer could speak literally. This is the dream state. And here we have the realm of archetypes, where you get that there is a universal collective that we're all journeying together in the soul, where you begin to see how we're all the same, the laws that govern us. We're all the same. Here, you've got this contempt at the thought of being like someone else. You have this absolute disdain at the thought of being ordinary. I am not ordinary. I'm something else, but I'm not ordinary. God, make me anything, but don't make me ordinary. Here's my child. Its name is Extraordinary. But here, you relish what is identical in you, that is the same in others. It gives you compassion. It is the source of compassion. It is the source of humbleness in front of another person. You're just like them, and it opens your heart. It doesn't close it. Down here, it makes you feel contempt for them because you look in the physical. Here you get, we're all one humanity. In fact, it's not even humanity. It's one soul. This is the realm of archetypes. This is where we live off the stories of God and the stories of the universe. So when you recognize this, that's the mother in them. That's the geek in them. That's the pirate in them. You spot the archetypes, and you see how they're living the story of that archetype. Are you following me? Okay. So I'm going to give you a story that fits in now on the timeline where we are. So you can get how the Manhattan Project changed the mythologies. If you saw, here's Earth, here's little Earth. That's not big enough, but I need my eraser. But I know it's somewhere. But I don't know where.
It's on the floor. To your left.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. It's the exact color. It's the exact color of the granite, of the carpet. Okay. Wait a minute, here. Oh, don't even consider it. Okay. Okay. I'm going to do it I'll do it there. Okay. Say that's the Earth, and say this is its ozone, so that archetypes float around like bubbles in the ozone. So you have the archetype of, say, the mother, and here you have, let's say teacher, and you have mystic, and here you have, this would be good, the queen, because that's going out. The king, that's getting its exit papers. Okay. But here's the networker, that's getting, and here's the geek, that's a new one. Okay, so they move around. The lights grow dim on some and they grow brighter than, here's a new one, environmentalist. They come and they go as needed. Someone said there's an environmentalist. Here's one, AP, astrophysicist. That's not just a title. That's someone who's looking up there for life. Astrobiologist, astrophysicist. That's what I'm going to be in my next life, is an astrobiologist. I put in the request. I think I love the name. I just want to say that. What are you? Astrobiologist. What are you? But you see that this is the archetype. If you said to someone, this is what I am, they got the whole, this is my archetypal portrait. They know who you are power-wise. They get it. If I said to you, he's living the story of Sisyphus. I'm in the Sisyphus syndrome. You would get that, correct? How many of you know Sisyphus? Okay. Oh, all right. If you do, and you don't know it. It's the story of the man always pushing the boulder up the hill, and just as, all right, how many of you know that story? You all know it. His name is Sisyphus. Welcome to Greek mythology. He almost gets the rock up the hill, and just as he pushes it up, and it's like, that's how I felt driving home yesterday. I was Sisyphus. I should have made it home in 18 to 20 minutes last night. It took me an hour and a half. No kidding, right? I could have been abducted by aliens. I'm driving home, and I get to the what do you care? You don't know the roads, but I get to this one, and it's blocked by the world's longest train. It probably was 14 miles long. And it's blocked, super blocked. And then I'm blocked by the cars that are blocked by the train. So, and all the lights are flashing because it's like a big, huge train that's probably moving, I don't know, rocket ships. And And like 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, then the train stops. And I'm like, so then there was a truck, what do you call those, pickup truck in front of me, and it makes a U-turn to go back and find another route, and I followed him. So I knew that I could backtrack to 17th and hop over the railroad track. I'm just ramming down the road, and I'm so angry, and I'm right? And I'm thinking, there's 17th, and I've got to beat the train if it kicks in again, and da-da-da-da. I turn, and what I think is 17th, it was 14th, and I get stuck in a shopping plaza. By the time I get out of there, the train had engaged, and I get stuck at 17th. I was like, this isn't happening to me. This isn't happening to me. This is not happening to me. I am now locked in again with the world's longest train. This isn't happening to me. So once again, I was locked in for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. And then this van in front of me turns, and I was like, I'm out of here, right? So I make a U, and I go back to the route. I was going back east, back to the street I wanted to go, First Avenue, and cross over. I get onto that street, another train. I sat there. My heart was like, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And I thought, I'm going to shoot myself. I'm really going to shoot. Someone got a gun, I'm going to shoot myself. In that neighborhood, they do. So finally, I got over the tracks. 2 lousy tracks, right? And that's when I start making up a story. Obviously, I was saved from an accident. You know, right? You start making up. I need a good old Catholic miracle story. It was like a nightmare. You know, that's Sisyphus. You're pushing and pushing and pushing, and it just goes backwards. Okay, so these are stories. These are stories, and we use stories and we tell stories. And when you get to know each other, you tell your story. Isn't that what we say? And when you tell your story, you start out on the first floor, and you tell people, I'm from here. You tell your first floor details. Where are you from? Where's your first floor? My first floor is in Chicago. Well, actually, it's not. It's in Oak Park. And my first floor, who are your first floor people? You don't want when you first get to know somebody, you're just meeting them. You do not want that person to say, oh, come with me real fast. I don't even know your name yet, but let me show you my 8th floor. Let me tell you my mythic stories. You're like, whoa. Too much, too fast. How do you say that? TMF? TMI? TMI. Okay? And down you go. This is too much. And you sure don't want to know the stories, the myths of that person's family members. You're like, get out of here. I didn't even know one of your stories. Too fast. You have to get to know someone's first floor before you inch up and let them begin to storytell. To storytell. And let them begin to, first on the second floor, you tell literal stories. Literal. Oh, I bought a car like that. And then this is what happened. The guy punctured the tires. The trunk fell off. You tell literal stories. Eventually, you begin to tell your mythic ones. I felt like a princess when I met this guy. Now come the myths. So she's a princess. She's looking for a knight. Now come your myths, your archetypes. And your stories begin to reveal themselves. But that doesn't happen on the first floor. It starts to happen as you rise. Because you don't talk like that on the first floor. On the first floor, it's like, did anyone see my keys? Where are my keys? Are you with me here? Because on the first floor, it's literal. It's where's my keys? What time is it? Dot, 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 dot. Let's skip it, because this is all about survival. Business. Eating. Where are my shoes? You don't have any shoes up here. And it's really important that you get this, because that's also how you relate to the world and how you relate to others. And when you say to someone, I can't relate to this person, what floor are they on? What floor are you? Where are you? Where are they? What's going on here? What floor did you go up to? Where are you? That you are losing your, how is it you are seeing things? What are you perceiving that this person can't see? Or did that person go up an altitude and you are not able to see the world, to perceive the world that that person is looking at, and you don't want to? It's too much, too fast. Are you with me here? You got to kind of, because every time you go up a floor, you can still go down to these floors, but you get that this floor is a visit. It's a visit now. And you get that there's more, and it becomes a temporary visit. I got to come down here, I got to just do what I need to do, but I'm out of this nightclub. And when someone tries to convince you this is reality, you're like, oh God, you are a Neanderthal. But you can't, the higher up you go, the more you can, the more it's okay. It's like, I used to live here too, and you just knock it off with that thinking. Because for someone else, you're a Neanderthal. All you got to do is find out there's another 10 floors, and this is pure Neanderthal too. There's always someone for whom we are pure Neanderthal. Believe you me. Believe you me. So, now, everything moves in mythologies. World War II was completely created from the mythology of a Third Reich, a perfect race. The Aryan race, and its right to control the whole of Europe and to do what it needed to do to create the perfect race and to destroy the imperfect races. That was created from the idea that a mythology gives you the right to do what you want to do, what you have to do to other people. There isn't one country, not one, including ours, that does not make its decisions based on mythologies. The manifest destiny. We can do whatever we want because we have a destiny. And every single country operates like that, at least the major leaguers. Every single country. So let's be clear that mythologies run the world, just like they run you. What is in one is in the whole. What's in the micro is in the macro. What fuels political decisions in your life, personal decisions, are your mythologies. In every relationship, as you'll see, it is your mythologies, and they come from your archetypes. They come from our archetypes. One of the primal archetypes of the United States is the master-slave. We can enslave anybody because we're a master. Okay. We do it economically, now we do it militarily, but we do it. Now we do it electronically, but anyway. Okay? These are archetypes. Now it's really important to follow this one. Do I need to hit a pause button and open it to questions for a moment? You guys doing okay? Good. All right. When Oppenheimer split the atom, let's go up here to the 10th floor. Let's say that let's say that a new myth popped in that suddenly went ping and got animated. And that would be the myth of Pandora and Zeus. Instantly. And it started to go and encompass the earth. What is that story? Prometheus goes up to Zeus in the heavens of Olympus, and he steals the primal element of fire. What's nuclear? Fire. Zeus is infuriated because he knows that if humanity gets its hands on fire, everything about their life will change. He said humanity's not ready for this element. It's too primal. But Prometheus thought, I'm going to give it to him anyway. So he goes down and he gives it to his brother Epimetheus. He says, here, make sure it gets to earth. And then he says to his brother, now you be careful, don't you ever, ever, ever take a gift from the gods. You remember that. But Zeus was very, very, very clever. Very clever. And now he was infuriated and very clever. So he gathers together all the goddesses. He gathers Hermes and Athena and Aphrodite and Venus. He says, come here, girls. I need me a goddess. She's got to be seductive. She's got to be beautiful. She's got to be all of these things. And mind you, Pandora, who of course is the goddess, she was a false goddess. So this is really important to keep in mind in this myth because they created her. They concocted her. And you remember I told you that now. And he creates her to be the wife of Epimetheus. And so he sends her to earth, and Epimetheus, forgetting the wisdom of his brother, takes her in as his wife. And of course, she was given a jar, or what they say, a box. And Zeus had said to Hermes, remember to make her especially curious. And then he says to her, don't you dare open this. And of course, she circles it and circles it and circles it. Finally, she can't take it anymore, yanks it open. And out of it flies all the toils of humanity. Suffering and illness, toil, injury, disasters. She realizes what she has done in her innocence. She did not do it deliberately. She's traumatized, she's terrified, the first victim of her own box, of her own gift. And she tries to put the lid back on, but it's too late. Now there's two endings to this story. One says hope got out as well. And the other said hope remained in the bottom of the box. Either way, Zeus also included hope. Now, the United States became Zeus as a result of the discovery of nuclear fire. In us becoming the first global power, there'd never been a global power. We became this. And what is important for you really to understand is this is not a political discussion in any way, shape, or form. I would have said the same thing about any other country, Russia, if they discovered it first, Germany. It doesn't matter. We are talking about what the discovery of nuclear fire has done to our Earth, our global village, our human community, and how it necessitated a quantum leap in human evolution, and the manner in which it has caused us to relate to each other differently. It has recalibrated the very definition, the very core mechanism of relationship itself. It has, by necessity, reshaped, recalibrated the manner in which we relate to all living things, including ourselves. The U.S. embodied the Pandora mythology, becoming Zeus. And we'll get to how that played out in a moment. But let's just take the whole of the earth and say from the time the nuclear fire was brought to the earth, it reshaped the world instantly, creating the Cold War, creating the idea from that time on, all of world politics became about who has the fire. Who has the fire? What country would have the right to have the fire? Who would control the fire? The fire, the fire, the fire. Now the fire is in the hands of terrorists. Who has the fire? Number two, and this is very important. From the moment we entered, before. I'll go with this. Human beings, humanity, life, animals. Our animal instinct, the animal in us, from the time we were created, the animal in us, this is what ties us to the animal kingdom, is that we have a survival instinct. What makes us different from the animal kingdom is that we also have a creative instinct. These two are our fundamental wheels. The need to survive, the need to create. The need to survive, the need to create. They've worked as the two basic wheels of life since the time humanity began, life began, since we've been here. The survival instinct has always pushed human beings forward. The combination of these two have always generated and sparked hope and possibilities and what if we created this and what if we created that. It has always pushed humanity forward in the possibilities of what could be. What could be. The creation of literacy to civilizations, to churches, to towns, to everything, to philosophies, to thinking. From the second we entered the nuclear age, those two mechanisms stopped and they reversed. They reversed. From the second we entered the nuclear age, it became the first time in the history of civilization that generation after generation after generation has lived wondering if they would survive. Preparing for the end destruction. Maybe we'll survive, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll get nuked, maybe we won't. And in front of our eyes, year after year, we watch more of our planet disintegrate. Environmentally, the air, the water, our fellow species, the trees, the seeds. We watch more and more. Will we make it, won't we? Who will have water, who won't? Where should we live that we can survive? We have types of situations that we have never had before. Prior to the nuclear age, we had war refugees. Today we have environmental refugees. Never before have we wondered, will we get nuked? Will we make it? Is this next conflict going to be the last one? We are surrounded by films, being entertained by films telling us the planet can and will be destroyed. The unimaginable is now being imagined, So we are imagining the unimaginable, taking the edge off that it's incomprehensible because we are now comprehending it. We are now watching it. So now it's not incomprehensible. Hollywood is doing that work for us. It is making it comprehensible. And it doesn't even get that that's what it's doing. And you don't even get that that's what it's doing. That it is absolutely laying the landscape for the ultimate incomprehensible act, which is setting our own world on fire while eating popcorn and saying, you know, this probably could happen. Yeah, it could. Let's go get dinner. The numbing, the constant numbing of how we now relate to a new category, which is the unthinkable, the unimaginable, the unbelievable, which has now become the possible. This is, as a result, our survival mechanism has gone into a very different, it has morphed, and I'm going to spend a lot of time with you on this one. It has morphed. And it is behaving in a way, it has, shall I say, adapted in a way that suits the unthinkable. The second is creativity. Prior to the nuclear age, humanity thrived on creativity and what it could create. After the nuclear age, more and more and more of what humanity created became either destructive or using destructive or lesser or destructive intent or less integrous intent. More and more and more and more. The absence of creative pride was replaced by who cares how long this lasts? Who cares how long this lasts? It's not as if the underlying premise was we're not going to be here anyway. Who cares? Let's build this so that it might last 2 to 5 years. Maybe it'll last 10 years. Who cares? Who cares? Who gives a damn? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Integrity lasts the length of the contract. We just have to look honest enough for the length of the contract. just to get through it. Because we have to survive the contract. Because we're not going to be here anyway. We just have to survive the contract. Just get it done. It doesn't matter anyway. Most of what's created now is destructive for the first time in the history of humanity. And this is the result of living in a world in which, at a very primal, unconscious level, we have this sense, and we have been, the pulsation is, we may not survive. So what difference does it make? And we are witnessing on the outside this play out in politics. What difference does it make if we spend, if we go to wars, if we this or that? What difference does it make if we do not legislate for the environment? I'm not just talking about this country, I'm talking about all countries. What difference does it make if nuclear regulators are not quality monitored? What difference does it make? And when populations are numbed, I said Pandora was not a real goddess. I want you to get that that represents that the strength of the feminine, of the feminist movement, the power of that was thwarted in these last 50 years. It was not a genuine feminist movement. Not by any means. There was nothing genuine about it. And what's worse is, as the feminine tried to emerge, as the anima tried to emerge, the animus rose in retaliation, in balance, and that came in the form of the pharmaceuticals. As the feminine came to balance the masculine in men and women, as consciousness tried to come up and say, we've got to become more conscious, we've become a nuclear world, and it is a power we cannot control. Without becoming more conscious, we will become more destructive. Because nuclear evil has gone nuclear. So good's got to become nuclear in proportion. And we've got to become very conscious, and it's not going to be pleasant to go in. It's going to be ruthless to get that conscious. It's going to be painful to be able to go in and clean out the negative. Instead, the culture got drugged. Oh my God, this is too painful, I can't deal with it. And we became more interested in pleasure and convenience than consciousness and stamina. And that's what happened. We decided to relate that way. Because simultaneously, the technology world became a pleasure-driven world, and we were like children in a candy shop. Ooh, look at this. Buzz, 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 buzz. Watch this. Zzz, this goes up, this goes up. Ooh, zzz, 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 zzz. And it's very, very, very difficult for the inside to compete with the outside. And are you with me here? This is like a superficial thing. There were many, many, many more factors. The 60s, we had remember the 50s going back, we had the ideal world that was like, Father Knows Best and all of this. Walt Disney came about and presented the archetype of the ideal magical child, and the Musketeers or Mouseketeers, whatever they were called, just as the psychological world began to introduce the wounded child. So these were the two child archetypes that met just as a culture, a society was becoming comfortable with therapy and a phenomenon called the inner child. So you had the magical child penetrating the United States just as the wounded child was coming up. So it became a culture that became very child-focused because we had at-home mothers and the image of a perfect barbecue mother, two-car family, two-child family. So you had at-home mothers mothering with the magical child, the wounded child, and do you see what I'm saying? And that provided the background for a inner psyche to come out, laying the groundwork for the beginning of the interior life to come forward, along with the social, spiritual. So the climate was set in the 60s. And that was a major participant with the beginning of relate to yourself and discover the inner self. It's a lot to kind of throw at you. Good morning. Any questions before we have coffee? Anything you want to say? Okay. Does it make sense? Okay. Yeah.
As you talk about the numbing and the losing consciousness, and that's why the drugs are getting faster and stronger, and the texting and all of that, the numbing through technology. You introduce it at such a young age, giving a child an iPad at 2, which is so smart, so creative. But what about 40 years from now?
It's pathetic getting an iPad at 2.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's one of those things where someone says, well, I have to, everybody else is. Well, at the first floor. You know, I would not want to be a parent today. And that I've seen competitive people, but none like parents. I mean, boy, oh boy, oh boy, wow. And I mean, in my day, when I was growing up, parents were not competitive like that. There was nothing to compete with. The kids played baseball in the summer, and it was so much healthier. It was just so much healthier. They played baseball, we played this, we played that. When did parents become these ruthless, competitive creatures of the night? I don't know. But it's just a whole different world. But you see, that's where it's like, here's the absence of time. Grow up faster, 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 faster. They've taken the linear timeline, and now it's a vertical one, where all things are simultaneous. It doesn't matter what your linear age is. This is about your vertical age. So now we are measuring vertical age instead of linear. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Age has gone vertical instead of linear. Yeah. Oh, sorry, honey. I didn't see you.
There's a book that came out this year. Do you remember Future Shock by Toffler?
Toffler, yeah.
A book came out this year called Present Shock. And it's about all of the ways that we're wired, and we're getting so much information, so much data, so much that we can't, not only can't we absorb all of it, we can't discern what's important or not. So that on the news, you will have Syria, you will have the Kardashians, you will have the newest diet, you will have a car chase, you will have a trial, and all of these things are presented in the popular media as equally important, as is Justin Bieber. I mean, it goes and goes and goes and goes, and we, at a certain kind of maturity, you may be able to discern, but young people can't. They're being bombarded with so much data, with all of the, with texting and what all those other things are, I can't think the names of. But it's just, we're being flooded. So it's called
And
present
remember,
shock.
data is not knowledge. Data is just data, but it's not knowledge. It's just data. This is how you hit this button, and this button equals this. But it's not knowledge. It's not the type of quality thought. It's not, for example, moral reasoning. How do you reason through a moral crisis? What do you do when you observe something that you know is wrong and you find yourself having to make a decision? How do you morally navigate that? What do you do when you're in an antinomial situation, when two sides are both right, instead of the usual thinking mechanism that you're accustomed to down here, where one has to be right and one has to be wrong? That's a child's system. Goody, baddy, righty, wrongy, winner, loser. That's a child's world. It's a world for very tiny creatures. But eventually, as your psyche gets more sophisticated and can grapple with a larger field, you begin to hold larger principles where both can be right, where there are no such things as winners or losers. That simply is a model that you have to throw out and take on the next. That's a pride model that you keep so that you can win and punish someone because you feel bad. And I want my, that's it. That's where that comes from. You have to take control of yourself. It's you who have an appetite for blood or the other person. Eventually, when you get over yourself, you can see that that's an impossible model. As long as you participate in that, there'll be war. You want to know where war comes from? That model. Right there. Right there. And eventually you get like, wait a minute, there's reasons for everything. There's reasons for everything. That person's angry at me. Maybe I did something too, and maybe it goes, I cannot maintain a belief in reincarnation, and only when convenient. I don't know, maybe this is an old debt. I have no idea what's going on here. There's got to be a way to reconcile this because we are generating really bad stuff. We are generating psychic free radicals. It's bad stuff. It's bad for me, it's bad for him, and da-da-da-da. It doesn't matter anymore who's right or wrong. I got to get out of this. I got to get to a higher altitude. And everyone can make arguments about justly staying right or wrong. I've done it. It's very tempting, and if it wasn't hard, it wouldn't matter. If it wasn't hard, it wouldn't matter. It's hard for everybody to yank themselves out of the lower level. That's what makes it so hard, and that's what makes it feel so good when you pull it off. It's like getting a scorpion out of your ear. Yeah, that's what it's like. It's horrible. How about it, huh? Isn't that great? Isn't that all right? Yeah, ooh, ah. And all those creatures of the desert make me go, ooh. You know. So, yeah. Anyone else? Got any feedback? It's really, and all of this, you know, as we're in this new world, and you start looking at all the threads and dominoes, you just begin to realize, oh my God, everything is different. Everything is different. the way ever since. The craziest thing was the prelude. The craziest thing was the prelude to how this world opened up to me. Do you want to hear that story? It's the craziest story ever. And it's the funniest thing that leads people here to there, but I have this passionate love of history. Uh-oh. One more story, I'll let him go. I spent a lot reading about Winston Churchill, who's one of my favorite characters of history. He just makes me laugh. And so I was reading about, there are many things about Churchill that I just got a kick out of. And one is that during the war, I'm sure most of you know about Bletchley Park and the code breakers that the English used during World War II. And that's fascinating enough. My God, it's just so fascinating. But he also had this kind of secret group of specially skilled people who, because Churchill believed that not only was he fighting a really formidable force in the Nazis, but he also recognized that they were not just brilliant strategically. He also knew that he was fighting genuine, bona fide evil. Not just evil by the word, like, boy, was that a bad thing to do. He meant evil as an independent, psychic, demonic entity. He got that. He got that. You can't have angels and not demons, people, okay? Just get it straight. You can't have the universe be the way you want because you've had too much Kool-Aid. Okay? There are demons. And he knew that. So he gathers this team together of people to fight evil. So he had, 007, Ian Fleming, he was one of them. He had mystery writers. He had excellent criminals. He had occultists. He had astrologers. He had people good at navigating that world. And they did this type of navigating. And when I was reading this and what they pulled off, which is just, they're great stories. Too bad we're not around a fireplace, because these are such great stories. I love them. But this is not the place for those. But what I realized is that these people had a real regard for the nature of good and the nature of evil. For both. They made their decisions. They did their thinking. And good and evil sat at their table, in their situation room, as a conscious participant in how they thought, in their thinking mechanism, because they knew that force was there. Like Cornwallis said, when he had Washington cornered at the end of Manhattan Island, and the fog had gone in that night, so he couldn't get all of Washington's raggedy troops, so he waited till the morning, and he thought, I'll get them then. And that night, the only time in the history, the Hudson changed directions. And the flow of the Hudson, allowing Washington to get his men to the other side of the Hudson. But what did Cornwallis do? Is he stood on the shore of Manhattan Island, and he sees Washington standing on the bow of this ship, of this little boat, as he's being rowed to the other end. They salute each other. Two generals looking at each other, fighting the beginning of this war. But what did Cornwallis do? He writes in his journal, all is lost, for nature has chosen the winner. They had a respect for the forces They knew that they were participants in the battles of human beings. That it was not just us, that nature too, the wind sprites and the nature spirits were equal participants in these forces. The worst winters of the war were during the war in the 40s. The worst winters. The worst. The worst. It was at Stalingrad, and when the Germans attacked the Russians. The worst winters, the worst storms hit them in the face. They froze them out. The worst. Not the easiest, the worst. Came after evil. Nature fought that darkness too. And then after the war, as soon as this greater power came into the hands of humanity, humanity decided evil didn't exist. Gradually and gradually, we began to dismantle our values. We'll talk about this later. Didn't take long. But as we progressed through the 60s, through the 70s, through the 80s, we changed our language of the soul. We dropped words. We decided we were too sophisticated to talk about such things. Okay, break time.